Why babies stare. It's not what you think. Right now, a baby is staring at you. Not blinking, not glancing away, just completely fixed on your face with an intensity that can make even adults feel a little judged. Most people just laugh it off, maybe wave, maybe make a strange sound hoping for a reaction. But over the past 2 decades, developmental neuroscientists have been trying to figure out exactly what's happening inside that tiny skull during those long, unbroken stares. And what they discovered doesn't just change how you look at babies, it reshapes how you think about consciousness itself. The bad vision theory reconsidered. Let's begin with the obvious explanation. Babies stare because their eyesight is poor and faces are simply the most interesting thing within view. It sounds logical. Newborns do have a limited visual range, about 8 to 12 inches, roughly the distance from your arms to your face when you're holding them. But here's where that idea falls apart. By around 3 months old, babies can see well enough to look at almost anything in the room. The ceiling, the window, the dog, even that pile of laundry in the corner. And yet, time after time, they still choose your face. That's not just blurry vision, that's preference. And when researchers started digging into why, the data revealed something no one expected. In 2017, a team at the University of Cambridge published a landmark study in the journal PNAS, one of the most respected scientific journals in the world. Brainwave synchronization between two people. They measured neural activity in both infants and adults during face-to-face interaction using a method called functional near-infrared spectroscopy. What they were searching for was brainwave synchronization. What they found stopped researchers in their tracks. When a baby locks eyes with you, when that stare happens, their brain waves begin to synchronize with yours. The same frequencies, the same rhythms, firing across 2 separate brains at the same time. They tested different conditions. An adult looking away? No synchronization. A neutral face? Only partial alignment. But mutual gaze, direct eye contact, produced the strongest neural coupling ever recorded between 2 individuals of different ages. Your baby isn't just looking at you, they're aligning their developing brain with yours. They're using your neural activity as a kind of framework, a template for constructing their own. That stare is how one human brain teaches another how to be human. But it gets even more interesting. Because babies don't look at everyone in the same way. Researchers at Harvard Medical School conducted a simple but revealing experiment. They showed 3-month-old infants 2 faces, a stranger's and their primary caregiver's. The infants actually looked longer at the stranger, which seems backwards until you understand why. Cognitive scientists call this the violation of expectation response. Babies spend more time looking at things they don't fully understand yet. The stranger's face is new, unfamiliar, unresolved, a puzzle. But their caregiver's face? By 3 months, they've already spent thousands of hours processing it. Every expression, every micro-movement, every subtle shift in tone. When they look at you, their person, they're not confused. They're reading you. Researchers at the University of Washington found that by 5 months, babies can tell the difference between a genuine smile and a fake one. By 6 months, they're tracking your emotional state and using it to guide their own behavior, a process known as social referencing. If you look scared, they freeze. If you look excited, they reach out. If you look calm, they explore. That long, steady stare is data gathering. Your baby is constructing a real-time emotional map of your face and using it to calibrate their understanding of what's safe and what isn't. You're not just their parent, you're the external hard drive of their nervous system. The Harvard Still Face Experiment. There's an experiment I need to tell you about, one that sparked years of ethical debate in developmental psychology because of how unsettling it is. It's called the still face paradigm. Designed in 1975 by Dr. Edward Tronick at Harvard, the setup is simple. A mother interacts normally with her infant, smiling, talking, responding. The infant is engaged, happy, staring up at her with full attention. Then, on cue, the mother suddenly goes completely blank. No expression, no response. Eyes open but emotionally absent. What happens in the next 2 minutes is one of the most studied behavioral sequences in the field. The baby notices immediately. They try to re-engage, big smiles, pointing, vocalizing, everything that usually works. Nothing happens. They try harder, bigger gestures, more urgent sounds. Still nothing. Within about 90 seconds, most infants begin to show clear stress responses. Cortisol levels rise, heart rate increases. Some babies start crying. Others shut down, withdrawing into an emotional flatness that mirrors the mother's expression. When the mother finally re-engages, recovery is quick, but not instant. After decades of running this experiment, Dr. Tronick reached a clear conclusion. Babies are not passive recipients of care. They are active participants in a continuous emotional exchange. And that exchange happens almost entirely through the face. The stare isn't admiration. It isn't confusion. It's communication in its purest form. Your baby is speaking to you with their eyes, and they need you to respond. What your baby is really building. There's another layer to all of this that rarely gets discussed outside academic circles, and it has to do with what babies are actually building during all that staring, beyond emotional connection. Researchers at MIT's Department of Brain and Cognitive Sciences have spent years studying infant visual processing. What they found changes how we understand the development of intelligence itself. Babies who experience more contingent face-to-face interaction in the first 6 months, meaning their cues are noticed and responded to, show significantly greater development in the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain responsible for planning, decision-making, emotional regulation, and complex social behavior, the foundation of adult cognition. In other words, being stared at and staring back is literally shaping the physical structure that will support your child's mind for life. Every time you meet their gaze, mirror their expression, or respond to what you see in their eyes, you're not just bonding, you're building. The warning you shouldn't ignore. Now, there is a warning here because if you notice a baby who doesn't stare, who consistently avoids eye contact, who seems to look through you instead of at you, that's not just a personality quirk. Reduced or absent gaze in infancy is one of the earliest observable signs researchers associate with atypical social development. It doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. Every baby develops at their own pace. But pediatric neuroscientists are clear on one point. Early detection changes outcomes. The brain's plasticity in the first 2 years of life is higher than it will ever be again after. Intervention at 6 months can achieve results that intervention at 2 years often cannot. So if something about the presence or absence of that stare feels off, trust that instinct. You are likely the most finely tuned instrument in the world when it comes to reading your own child's face, because you've been doing it since the moment they were born. So the next time a baby locks eyes with you from across the room and just stares, remember what's really happening. Their brain is reaching out towards yours. They're using your face to learn how to be a person, how to feel, how to interpret safety and danger, how to exist in a world filled with other humans. 15,000 years of evolution didn't give babies those big, round, irresistible eyes by chance. Those eyes are one of the most advanced social interfaces ever developed. And when they fix onto yours, the only real response is to look back. If this changed how you see the babies in your life, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below. I want to know, was there ever a moment when a baby's stare completely stopped you in your tracks? Because if there was, now you understand what was really going on. And if you're curious about why babies sometimes laugh at nothing, at empty corners at 3 a.m., at something only they seem to notice, that's the next video, and the science behind it is even stranger than anything you've heard so far. It begins quietly. Almost no one notices at first. You're 7 years old, looking into the eyes of a parent who is coming undone. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's just the empty silence of someone too shattered to truly show up. And without a single word, something ancient switches on in your small mind. If I don't keep everything together, no one will. This is how a child disappears, not in a physical sense, but psychologically. They smile more, cry less. They learn to read the room before they ever speak. They become the emotional thermostat of the household. They turn into small adults long before their brains are ready. And the world rewards them for it. You're so mature, so responsible, so strong. But no one ever pauses to ask, at what cost? This is the invisible grief carried by those who were forced to grow up too fast. And today we're going deep into the psychology of that child, because the effects don't fade with time. They shape you. They follow you into your relationships, your career, your sense of self-worth. And if you don't understand what happened, you'll spend your adult life repeating the same survival patterns that once protected you, but are now slowly harming you. Let's begin with what's actually happening on a developmental level. When a child is forced to emotionally support adults instead of being supported themselves, psychologists call it parentification. It's when the child becomes the caregiver, the mediator, the therapist, the protector. This isn't just unhealthy, it reshapes the brain. Because when a child is repeatedly placed in charge of emotional regulation, either their own or someone else's, it creates something known as hypervigilance. You're constantly scanning for danger. You walk on eggshells. You learn that love is transactional. You give peace, and maybe in return you'll get safety. You learn that your needs are risky, while theirs are urgent. So you disappear, not physically, but emotionally. And in your place, a version of you forms that performs well. You become the good child, the quiet achiever, the therapist friend, the one who never asks for anything. And you wear that role so convincingly that even you forget it's a mask. But underneath it all, something hurts, something aches, because the inner child you buried didn't vanish. They're still there, silently screaming, "Why didn't anyone protect me?" As you get older, the patterns grow more complex. You might become hyper-independent. You reject help, push people away, or never quite feel safe in love. You might feel numb during happy moments because joy feels unfamiliar, undeserved, even threatening. You might struggle to rest because productivity is the only way you've ever felt worthy. And perhaps the hardest part, you might not even realize you're still stuck in survival mode. Because when dysfunction is normalized early on, your nervous system starts to accept chaos as the baseline. Stillness feels wrong. Peace feels suspicious. Love feels like a debt you'll eventually have to repay. This is the psychology of a child who had to grow up too soon. It's not just sadness, it's complex trauma that reshapes how you see the world, and more importantly, how you see yourself. You might wonder, why would any child take on that role? Because children will do anything to maintain attachment, even abandon themselves. The choice is never conscious, it's biological. In the absence of safety, the child trades authenticity for belonging. That isn't weakness, that's intelligence, that's instinct. But here's the tragedy. What protected you then can trap you now. So many of us are walking around as high-functioning adults with deeply neglected inner children quietly pulling the strings. We overachieve to earn love. We stay silent to avoid rejection. We take care of everyone else while secretly wishing someone would simply ask if we're okay. And that quiet fantasy that someone will see through the act, that they'll notice you're not as strong as you pretend, that maybe, just maybe, you'll finally be allowed to fall apart and be held. That longing doesn't come from your adult self. It comes from the child who never got to be one. The first step towards healing isn't fixing, it's witnessing. Because until you acknowledge what happened, you'll keep minimizing your own story with thoughts like, "It wasn't that bad. Others had it worse. I turned out fine."
But fine is a mask too, and deep down you know that. So what happens to that child when they grow up? They become adults who never feel safe, even in peaceful environments. They become partners who can't fully trust softness. They become givers who struggle to receive. They become the kind of people who apologize for crying, flinch at compliments, and mistake success for exhaustion. This is the cost of growing up too fast. Because if your childhood trained you to be strong instead of soft, to stay quiet instead of honest, to fix others while ignoring your own wounds, then what kind of adulthood does that create? You inherit a life where you're constantly holding your breath, waiting for someone to finally give you permission to fall apart. But here's the truth. No one is coming to rescue the child you buried. You are the one who has to go back and hold their hand. You are the one who has to say what no one ever said. You didn't deserve that. You were just a child. You're allowed to rest now. This is where shadow work begins. Not with fixing, not with performing, not with covering pain and fake positivity, but by turning toward the abandoned parts of yourself and saying, I see you now, I hear you now, and I'm not leaving. That is the repair process, and it's brutal because it asks you to feel the grief you never had the time or space to feel. It asks you to sit with the anger, the sadness, the unmet needs, to cry for the birthdays where no one showed up, to mourn the innocence you lost while protecting people who were supposed to protect you. But that grief isn't weakness, it's evidence that you're healing, because what was once frozen is finally beginning to move. Now let's look at how these survival patterns show up in adulthood, subtle, painful, and often invisible. You might become the therapist in all your friendships, yet never allow anyone to truly see you. You might be praised for your independence, while deep down you're afraid of being a burden. You might enter relationships where you overfunction, constantly fixing, managing, over-explaining, and then wonder why resentment builds. You might struggle with boundaries because saying no still feels like betrayal. These aren't personality traits, they're coping mechanisms, learned, conditioned, and importantly, they can be unlearned. But that only happens when you stop idolizing your strength and start acknowledging your wounds. One of the most powerful questions you can ask your inner child is this: what did I need back then that I never received? The answers might sound like, I needed someone to tell me it wasn't my fault. I needed someone to ask how I was. I needed to play, to rest, to laugh without fear. And slowly, very slowly, you begin offering those things to yourself, not to rewrite the past, but to stop reliving it. This is how you stop searching for parents in your partners. This is how you stop confusing anxiety with intuition. This is how you stop running from both who you were and who you're becoming. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how irrational, to avoid confronting their own soul." But shadow work asks us to face it, all of it. The neglected parts, the shame, the fear, the anger. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. So if you grew up too fast, understand this: your maturity was never the issue. The issue was that you didn't have a choice. But now you do. You can choose softness. You can choose rest. You can choose to stop managing everyone else's emotions and begin honoring your own. And no, it won't happen overnight. There will be days when you feel like that child again. Good, that's part of it. Let that child come home. Let them cry. Let them play. Let them finally be seen. Because you're not broken. You're becoming whole. And maybe for the first time, you're finally growing up the way you were meant to. Not through pressure, not through fear, but through truth. You may not have had a childhood, but you still have a future. And this time, you get to write it.